David Miller wiped the grease from his hands and looked at the clock on the wall. It was 3 in the morning, station time. The hangar bay was empty and quiet. He liked it this way. No people asking questions. No officers giving orders. Just him and the broken machines that needed fixing. He had been a mechanic on Station Meridian 7 for 4 years now. Before that, he worked on cargo ships that traveled between distant stars. He was good at his job. Machines made sense to him. People did not. David was 28 years old, but he felt older. He had no family waiting for him anywhere. No girlfriend. No wife. He had never even been on a real date. Life in deep space did not give many chances for romance. He had accepted this long ago. Some men were meant to be alone. He walked to the observation window and looked out at the stars. They were beautiful tonight. Millions of tiny lights spread across the black canvas of space. He wondered if anyone out there was looking back at him. A loud alarm broke the silence. Red lights began to flash across the hangar bay. David ran to the control panel and checked the screens. A ship was coming. A big one. The computer identified it as a Draconian Imperial cruiser. David felt his heart beat faster. The Draconians were one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. They were dragon people. In their true form, they were massive creatures with scales and wings and fire in their bellies. But they could also take a humanoid shape. Even then, they were giants compared to humans. Most stood between 10 and 15 feet tall. Humans and Draconians had a peace treaty, but they were not friends. The dragon people thought humans were weak and small. They tolerated them. Nothing more. The cruiser landed in the main hangar without asking for permission. This was strange. Even Draconians followed basic protocols. David grabbed his tool bag and walked toward the ship. Maybe they had engine trouble. Maybe they needed a mechanic. The ship's door opened with a hiss of steam. A figure stepped out, and David stopped breathing for a moment. She was the most incredible being he had ever seen. She stood 12 feet tall, with deep red scales covering her arms and neck. Her eyes were golden, like 2 small suns. Great wings folded behind her back, and her long silver hair fell past her shoulders. She wore armor made of black metal that seemed to absorb the light around it. She was a Draconian female. And she was magnificent. The woman looked around the hangar with wild eyes. She seemed scared. This surprised David. He did not think Draconians could feel fear. She saw him and froze. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Then she spoke. Her voice was deep and powerful, but there was a shake in it. "Human, where are the station commanders?" David found his voice. "Sleeping, ma'am. It's the middle of the night cycle. Is something wrong with your ship?" She looked back at her cruiser and then at him again. "I need to hide. They are coming for me. Who is coming?" Before she could answer, a terrible sound filled the hangar. Metal screamed as a section of the outer wall began to buckle. Something had hit them from outside. The station shook, and David fell to his knees. Air began rushing toward the damaged wall. A breach. The hangar was losing atmosphere. The Draconian woman spread her wings to steady herself against the wind. David could barely stand. He knew he had only minutes before all the air was gone. He would die. She might survive. Her species could hold their breath for hours. But David did not think about running. He thought about the emergency seal kit on the far wall. If he could reach it, he could patch the breach. He had done it before on old cargo ships. He ran. The wind pushed against him like a giant hand. His lungs burned. His eyes watered. But he kept running. The Draconian woman watched him with wide eyes. "What are you doing, human? You will die." David did not answer. He reached the wall and grabbed the seal kit. His fingers were numb from the cold. The air was getting thin. He could feel darkness creeping at the edges of his vision. He ran to the breach. The hole was big, almost 3 feet wide. Metal had twisted inward from the impact. David pulled out the emergency foam and began spraying. The foam expanded and hardened on contact with the vacuum. He sprayed and sprayed until his arms ached. The wind stopped. The foam held. The breach was sealed. David collapsed on the floor, gasping for breath. His whole body shook. He had almost died. But he had saved the hangar. The draconian woman walked to him slowly. She looked down at him with an expression he could not read. Then she did something unexpected. She knelt beside him. "You risked your life," she said softly, "for a hangar bay, for a station that is not even yours." "Why?" David coughed and sat up. "It's my job. And there are people sleeping in the sections behind this hangar. If the breach had spread, they would have died too." She studied him for a long moment. "You are strange, human. My kind would have fled. Self-preservation is the first law of nature." "Maybe humans are just stupid," David said with a weak smile. The woman made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Maybe. Or maybe you are braver than I thought." She held out her massive hand to him. "I am Lady Seraphina, 7th daughter of the Dragon Empress, youngest of the 7 sisters who ruled a draconian empire." David took her hand. It was warm, almost hot, and covered in smooth scales. "David Miller, mechanic, nobody special." "You just saved my life, David Miller. That makes you special to me." She helped him stand. "Those hunters outside, they were sent by my family. I was supposed to marry a clan lord from a rival house, a political union. I refused and fled. They're trying to force you to marry someone?" "Yes, among my people, females do not choose. We are given." Her golden eyes burned with anger and sadness. "I have been alone for 16 months, running, hiding. I have not known peace or comfort or—" She stopped and looked away. "I have not had intimacy in 16 months. I have not been touched with kindness in even longer." David did not know what to say. This powerful, beautiful creature was lonely, just like him. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "That sounds terrible." Seraphina looked at him again. "You are the first person to say that to me. Everyone else tells me to do my duty, to accept my fate." She tilted her head. "You are a strange little human, David Miller. I think I like you." David felt his face grow warm. "I'm not that little." She smiled, showing teeth that were just a bit too sharp. "To me, you are. But perhaps that is not a bad thing." She looked toward the sealed breach. "Will you help me hide? Just until I can find a way off this station?" David knew this was dangerous. Hiding a draconian princess from her own people could start a war. But when he looked into her golden eyes, he saw something familiar. He saw loneliness. He saw a person who just wanted to be free. "Yeah," he said, "I'll help you." And just like that, David Miller's quiet life changed forever. David led Seraphina through the dark corridors of Station Meridian 7. He knew these tunnels better than anyone. 4 years of night shifts had taught him every secret path, every forgotten room, every place where the cameras did not reach. Seraphina had to duck her head at every doorway. Her wings scraped against the walls. She was not built for human spaces. "Where are you taking me?" she asked. "Maintenance level 6. Nobody goes there anymore. The old water recycling system broke down 2 years ago. They built a new one on level 12. The old rooms are just sitting empty." They reached a heavy metal door. David punched in a code, and it slid open with a groan. Inside was a large room filled with old pipes and dusty machines. It was not pretty, but it was hidden. "This is your best hiding spot?" Seraphina looked around with doubt in her golden eyes. "Trust me. The hunters will search the guest quarters, the cargo bays, maybe even the command center. They won't think to look in a broken water plant. David walked to a corner and pulled a tarp off an old mattress. I sleep here sometimes when I don't want to go back to my quarters. It's quiet. Serafina sat down on the floor. Even sitting, she was almost as tall as David standing. She pulled her wings tight against her back and sighed. "Thank you, David Miller. I know you are taking a great risk for me." David sat on an old crate across from her. "Can I ask you something?" "You may. Why did you refuse to marry this clan lord? I mean, you're a princess. Isn't political marriage just part of the job?" Serafina was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. "Lord Marcus of House Blackfire is a cruel man. He has had 3 wives before me. All 3 died under mysterious circumstances. My mother knows this. My sisters know this. But they do not care. The alliance with House Blackfire would make our empire stronger. My life is a small price to pay." David felt anger rise in his chest. "That's horrible. That is politics." Serafina looked at her clawed hands. "Among my people, females are valuable only for breeding and alliances. We are not asked what we want. We are told what we will do, and you ran away. I ran away." She smiled, but it was a sad smile. "My sisters think I am weak. A coward, but I could not do it. I could not give myself to a monster just because my family commanded it." David thought about this. On Earth, humans had fought wars over the right to choose their own lives. Freedom was something his species valued above almost everything else. He had never thought how rare that might be in the universe. "I think you're brave," he said. "Standing up to your whole family takes more courage than fighting a battle." Serafina looked at him with surprise. "You are a strange human. Your kind is supposed to be weak and simple. But you speak wisdom. Hey, we're not that simple." David grinned. "We did figure out space travel. After we had been flying between stars for 10,000 years. Okay, fair point." They both laughed. It was a small moment, but it felt important. For the first time, they were not just a human and a draconian. They were just 2 people, hiding in a dusty room, sharing a joke. The hours passed slowly. David brought food and water from the canteen. Serafina ate enough for 5 humans, which made sense given her size. They talked about small things at first. Favorite foods. Childhood memories. The loneliness of space. "I have 6 sisters," Serafina said. "Victoria is the eldest. She is the High Empress now, since our mother passed. Then there is Margaret, Elizabeth, Catherine, Anne, and Mary. I am the youngest." "The runt? Runt?" David laughed. "You're 12 feet tall. My sisters are taller. Victoria stands 18 feet in her humanoid form. In her true dragon shape, she is as large as your human warships." Serafina shook her head. "I was always the small one. The weak one. They never expected much from me." "Being underestimated can be an advantage," David said. "Perhaps, but it is lonely." Serafina pulled her knees to her chest, a surprisingly human gesture. "I have never had a real friend. Only servants and handlers and guards. People who were paid to be near me." David understood that feeling. He had co-workers, but no real friends. He had acquaintances at the station bar, but no one who would miss him if he disappeared. "I don't have any friends either," he admitted. "I spend most of my adult life on ships and stations. Never stayed anywhere long enough to make connections." Then we are both alone. Serafina looked at him with those golden eyes. "Maybe that is why I feel comfortable with you. You understand." David felt something warm in his chest. It was a feeling he had not experienced in a long time. Connection. Real connection. "Do you want to play cards?" he asked suddenly. "Cards? It's a human game." You use these little pieces of paper with pictures on them. It's how humans pass time when they're bored or hiding from dragon hunters. Serafina tilted her head. I have never played a human game before. David pulled a worn deck of cards from his pocket. He always carried them. Old habit from his ship days. I'll teach you. It's called poker. The goal is to make the best combination of cards and trick your opponent into thinking you have something better than you do. Deception is part of the game. A big part. Serafina smiled, showing her sharp teeth. I think I will enjoy this. She did not enjoy it. She was terrible. Her face showed every emotion. When she had good cards, her scales literally glowed brighter. When she had bad cards, her wings drooped. David won every hand. This game is broken, Serafina declared after losing for the 10th time. The game is fine. You just have no poker face. I have an excellent face. For combat, maybe. Not for bluffing. Serafina threw her cards at him, but she was laughing. David laughed too. The sound echoed off the old pipes and rusty machines. It was the happiest sound this forgotten room had ever heard. Later, when the station's artificial night deepened, they heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Heavy footsteps. Draconian footsteps. David pressed his finger to his lips. Serafina nodded and went completely still. Her scales seemed to darken, blending with the shadows. A natural camouflage ability that David had not known about. Voices came through the door. Deep, growling voices speaking the Draconian language. David did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. They were angry. They were searching. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. David held his breath. His heart pounded so loud he was sure they could hear it. Then the footsteps moved on. The voices faded. They were safe. For now, Serafina let out a long breath. Her scales returned to their normal red color. That was close. Too close. David wiped sweat from his forehead. We need a better plan. We can't hide here forever. I know. Serafina looked at him with an expression he could not read. But for now, I am grateful. You could have given me to them. It would have been safer for you. I don't abandon people who need help. It's not who I am. Serafina reached out and touched his face with one clawed finger. The touch was gentle, impossibly gentle for a creature that could crush stone. You are not like other humans I have met, she said softly. You are not like anyone I have met. David's face grew hot. I'm just a mechanic. No. Serafina pulled her hand back. You are much more than that. You just do not know it yet. They sat in comfortable silence after that. Two lonely souls from different worlds, hiding in the dark, not sure what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt alone. Outside, the hunters continued their search. But in that forgotten room, something new was beginning. Something neither of them had expected. Something that would change everything. 3 days passed. The Draconian hunters grew impatient. Their leader, a massive warrior named Commander Stone, sent a message to the station commander. The message was simple. Give us the princess, or we will destroy this station. Station Commander Patricia Wells was a tough woman with gray hair and cold blue eyes. She had served in 3 wars and survived situations that would have broken most people. She did not scare easily. Tell the commander that Meridian 7 is a neutral station under galactic law, she said to her communications officer. We do not surrender anyone without proper legal process. The response came quickly. Galactic law does not apply to Draconian royalty. She is our property. Return her or face the consequences. Patricia turned off the screen. She looked at the officers gathered around her. Does anyone know where this princess is hiding? Nobody spoke. But Patricia noticed something. David Miller, her best night shift mechanic, was standing in the corner. He was not looking at her. He was looking at the floor that Patricia was not a stupid woman. She had been watching the security footage. She knew David had been in the hangar when the princess arrived. She knew he had been taking extra food from the canteen. She knew he had been spending all his time on maintenance level 6, where nobody ever went. But she also knew something else. She knew that forcing a woman to marry against her will was wrong. She knew that surrendering someone to face abuse was wrong. And she knew that humans did not bow to bullies, no matter how big they were. If nobody knows where she is, then we cannot help the Draconians find her, Patricia said calmly. Everyone is dismissed. David caught her eye as he left. She gave him the smallest nod. It was enough. He understood. That night, David told Serafina what had happened. Your commander is protecting me? Serafina seemed shocked. But why? She does not even know me. Because it's the right thing to do. Humans are stubborn about stuff like that. You will all die. Commander Stone will destroy this station. He has done it before. David sat down next to her. Over the past 3 days, they had talked for hours. He had learned about her childhood in the Dragon Palace. She had learned about his years on cargo ships. They had played more poker. She was still terrible at it. We won't just let them take you, David said. That's not how we work. But I am not worth dying for. I am just one person. David took her hand. It was a bold move. Touching a Draconian without permission was usually forbidden. But Serafina did not pull away. Her scales were warm against his skin. Everyone is worth protecting, he said. That's what being human means. We don't measure people's value. We just help them. Serafina stared at him for a long moment. Her golden eyes were wet. David realized with shock that she was crying. Dragons could cry. No one has ever said that to me before, she whispered. My whole life I have been measured. Measured against my sisters. Measured for my political value. Measured for my breeding potential. She squeezed his hand. You see me as a person. Just a person. That is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. An alarm shattered the moment. Red lights flashed. A voice came over the speakers. All personnel, this is Commander Wells. The Draconian ship is charging weapons. All non-essential staff report to the emergency shelters. Security teams report to battle stations. David jumped to his feet. They're actually going to attack. I have to surrender. Serafina stood up, her head nearly touching the ceiling. I cannot let innocent people die for me. No. David grabbed her arm. There has to be another way. What way? They have a warship. You have a trading station. David's mind raced. He thought about the Draconian cruiser. He thought about its systems. He thought about how all ships, no matter how advanced, needed certain things to work. Their targeting computer, he said slowly. All ships use external sensors for targeting. If we could disable those sensors, they could aim their weapons. How would you disable sensors on an enemy ship? David smiled. It was a dangerous smile. I'm a mechanic, remember? I fix things, but I also know how to break them. 30 minutes later, David stood in the station's small shuttle bay with 5 other humans. They were all engineers and mechanics. They all had volunteered. Patricia Wells stood before them. This is insane. You know that, right? Yes, ma'am. David checked his tool bag. But insane plans are kind of a human specialty. The Draconians are 10 times stronger than us. Faster. They can breathe fire. We have something better. What? David grinned. We have duct tape and determination. The commander stared at him for a moment. Then she laughed, a short, sharp sound. God help us all. Good luck, Miller. The shuttle launched into the darkness of space. The Draconian warship hung in the void like a metal dragon, its weapons glowing with terrible energy. David looked at it through the window. He was terrified, but he was also certain this was the right thing to do. "Okay, team," he said. "Their sensors are on the underside of the ship. If we approach from the asteroid field, their main cameras won't spot us. We land, we plant the charges, we run. Simple." "Simple," repeated Thomas Green, the youngest of the group. His hands were shaking. "Sure, simple." They flew low through the asteroid field. Rocks the size of houses drifted past them. One wrong move would crush them instantly. But David had been flying through asteroid fields for years. His hands were steady on the controls. They reached the warship's underbelly. David docked the shuttle on an emergency hatch. The Draconians had not noticed them yet. "Move fast," David ordered. "We have maybe 10 minutes before someone sees the shuttle." They climbed onto the hull. The metal was cold under David's gloves. He could see the sensor array ahead, a cluster of dishes and antennas. He pulled out his plasma cutter and got to work. 5 minutes passed. The charges were planted. Everything was going perfectly. Then a hatch opened 20 feet away. A Draconian warrior climbed out. He was 8 feet tall with black scales and eyes like burning coal. He saw the humans and roared, "Run!" David shouted, "Get to the shuttle." His team ran. The Draconian chased them. He was fast, impossibly fast. He caught Thomas by the leg and threw him against the hull. David didn't think. He grabbed a wrench from his bag and charged at the Draconian. He swung with all his strength. The wrench connected with the warrior's face dot. It didn't do much damage, but it surprised him. The Draconian released Thomas and turned to David. "Little human," the warrior growled. "You dare strike me?" "Yeah." David raised the wrench again. "I dare." The Draconian laughed. He raised his clawed hand to strike. David knew he was going to die. Then fire exploded from the darkness. Not Draconian fire. This fire was different. Redder. Hotter. It hit the warrior in the chest and sent him flying off into space. David turned. Serafina was hovering behind him, her massive wings spread wide. She had followed him. She had saved him. "I told you to stay hidden," David said. "I do not take orders from mechanics." She grabbed him with one arm. "Hold on." They flew back to the shuttle. David hit the detonator as they escaped. The charges exploded. The sensor array turned into a beautiful ball of fire and debris. They made it back to the station as the Draconian warship tried to fire. But without sensors, their shots went wild. They hit nothing but empty space. Commander Wells stared at the screen in disbelief. "They're retreating." The Draconians are actually retreating. The control room erupted in cheers. Humans slapped each other on the backs. Some were crying. They had won. Against impossible odds, they had won. But David wasn't celebrating. He was lying on the floor of the shuttle bay, bleeding from a wound he hadn't noticed until now. The Draconian warrior had cut him before Serafina arrived. The cut was deep. Serafina knelt beside him. Her golden eyes were full of fear. "David, David, stay awake." "I'm okay," he lied. He couldn't feel his legs. That was probably bad. Serafina placed her hands on his wound. She closed her eyes. And then she began to glow. Fire poured from her hands. But this fire didn't burn. It was warm and gentle. David felt it enter his body, felt it knitting his flesh back together, felt it pushing death away. When it was over, Serafina collapsed beside him. She had used everything she had. David sat up. His wound was gone, but something was different. He looked at his hands. Faint patterns like scales marked his skin. They shimmered red in the light. "What did you do?" he asked. Serafina wouldn't look at him. Her voice was barely a whisper. I saved your life, but I also bound it to mine. Among my people, it is called the life bond. It is eternal. It cannot be undone. A tear rolled down her scaled cheek. I am sorry. I did not ask permission. I just could not let you die. David looked at the scale patterns on his skin. He looked at Seraphina, crying beside him. He should have been angry. She had changed him forever without asking, but all he felt was wonder. And something else. Something that felt a lot like love. Hey, he said softly. He reached out and wiped a tear from her face. It's okay. I'm not mad. She finally looked at him. You should be. Probably. But I'm not. He smiled. I guess you're stuck with me now. Seraphina laughed through her tears. It was the most beautiful sound David had ever heard. Outside, the damaged draconian warship limped away into the darkness. But both of them knew this wasn't over. The hunters would return. And next time, they would bring more than one ship. But for now, in this moment, they were together. And somehow, that was enough. David woke up in the medical bay 3 days later. The doctor said he had been unconscious the whole time. His body was recovering from something they could not explain. His blood tests showed markers that were not human. His temperature was higher than normal. And the scale patterns on his skin had spread from his hands to his arms. He sat up in bed and looked at himself in the mirror. The scales were beautiful in a strange way. They caught the light and glowed faint red. He touched them. They felt like his normal skin, but stronger somehow. A nurse came in and jumped when she saw him awake. Mr. Miller, you should be resting. Where is Seraphina? The nurse hesitated. The draconian woman? She's been waiting outside your room for 3 days. She refuses to leave. We couldn't make her even if we tried. David smiled. Send her in. The door opened and Seraphina ducked through. She looked exhausted. Her scales were dull, and her golden eyes had dark circles under them. But when she saw David awake, her whole face changed. She rushed to his bed and then stopped, suddenly unsure. You are awake, she said. I am. How do you feel? Different. Strong. David held up his arm with the scale patterns. And apparently part dragon now. Seraphina winced. I am sorry. The life bond changes both people. You will have some of my abilities now. Better hearing. Better vision. You will live longer than normal humans. Maybe much longer. How much longer? Dragons live for thousands of years. You might live for hundreds now. She looked at the floor. I have changed your entire existence without asking. I understand if you hate me. David reached out and took her hand. She flinched at his touch, but did not pull away. Seraphina, look at me. She raised her eyes. I don't hate you. I could never hate you. You saved my life. You gave me a part of yourself to keep me alive. That's the opposite of something to hate. But I bound you to me forever. Among my people, the life bond means we are connected until death. You will feel what I feel. When I am hurt, you will know. When I am happy, you will sense it. We are no longer separate beings. David thought about this. He had spent his whole life alone. The idea of being permanently connected to someone should have scared him. But it didn't. Instead, it felt right. What does the life bond mean for you? He asked. What does it mean in dragon culture? Seraphine's scales flushed a deeper red. She was blushing. David realized. Dragons could blush. The life bond is sacred. It is more permanent than marriage. It is reserved for... She struggled with the words. It is what mates give each other. True mates. The ones they choose to spend eternity with. So, we're basically married? Dragon married? More than married. Married couples can separate. Life-bonded partners cannot. We are one soul in two bodies now. David let this sink in. He had gone from having no relationships to being eternally bonded to a dragon princess in less than a week. Life was strange sometimes. Okay, he said. Serafina blinked. Okay, that is all you have to say. What else should I say? I'm not going to pretend I understand everything. I'm not going to pretend I'm not scared. But I'm also not going to run away from this. He squeezed her hand. I feel something for you, Serafina. I felt it since that first night. Maybe it's the bond. Maybe it would have happened anyway. I don't know. But I'm not sorry it happened. Serafina stared at him. Then she did something unexpected. She leaned down and pressed her forehead against his. It was a dragon gesture. David somehow knew. An intimate gesture. A gesture of trust. You are impossible, she whispered. Every human I have ever met has been afraid of my kind. But you charge at warriors with wrenches. You make jokes while bleeding. You accept eternal bonds like they are minor inconveniences. She pulled back and looked into his eyes. What are you, David Miller? Just a mechanic, he said. A really stubborn mechanic. She laughed. He had never heard her really laugh before. It was deep and warm and made his whole body feel light. Over the next few days, David learned to deal with his new abilities. His hearing was incredible now. He could hear conversations from 3 rooms away. His vision was sharper too. He could see tiny details he had never noticed before. But the strangest part was the emotional connection. He could feel Seraphine's presence like a warmth in his chest. When she was nearby, the warmth grew stronger. When she was far, it faded. He always knew where she was, and she always knew where he was. The Draconians on the station treated him differently now. Before, they had ignored him like all humans. Now, they bowed when he passed. They called him bondmate. They showed him respect that he had never earned. Why are they treating me like this? David asked Serafina. The life bond is the highest honor among my people. You are not just a human to them anymore. You are the chosen partner of a dragon sister. That makes you royalty by our law. I'm royalty? Technically, yes. You have the right to address the High Empress as an equal. You have the right to enter any dragon hall without permission. You have the right to challenge anyone who insults your bondmate to combat. I'm definitely not challenging anyone to combat. Have you seen Draconian combat? Serafina smiled. It is usually fatal. They were laughing when the message came. A communication from the Draconian Empire. Priority 1. From High Empress Victoria herself. The whole station gathered to watch. Commander Wells played the message on the main screen. Victoria was terrifying. She looked like Serafina, but bigger. Much bigger. Her scales were pure gold, and her eyes burned like stars. She sat on a throne made of bones and metal, and her voice shook the speakers. Station Meridian 7, you have harbored a fugitive of the Draconian Empire. You have destroyed one of our warships. You have embarrassed my hunters. She leaned forward, and even through the screen, David felt fear crawl up his spine. I am not my commanders. I do not make threats. I make promises. The screen shifted to show a fleet of ships. Hundreds of them. Warships, carriers, destroyers. An armada that could wipe out a planet. My fleet will arrive at your station in 3 days. You will surrender my sister. You will surrender the human she has bonded with. And you will pay for your actions. Victoria smiled, and it was the smile of a predator. There will be no negotiation. There will be no escape. Prepare yourselves. The message ended. The room was silent. People looked at each other with fear in their eyes. 3 days. They had 3 days before an army arrived to kill them all. Commander Wells turned to David and Serafina. Well, that's not good. I will surrender, Seraphina said immediately. I cannot let everyone here die for me. No, David stepped forward. There has to be another way. What way, David? My sister has 1,000 ships. You have a station with 20 security guards. I don't know yet, but we'll figure something out. We always do. Patricia Wells crossed her arms. Miller is right. We're not handing anyone over to be executed. That's not what humans do. You will all die. Maybe, but we'll die standing up, not on our knees. Patricia looked at the screen where Victoria's face had been. 3 days. We have 3 days to come up with the craziest plan in human history. She looked at David. You seem good at crazy plans. Got any ideas? David thought about the message. He thought about Victoria. He thought about everything Seraphina had told him about dragon culture. The life bond, he said slowly. You said I have the right to address the Empress as an equal now? Yes, technically, but... And you said Draconians respect strength and courage above all else? Yes, but David, then I'm going to do something stupid. He looked at Patricia. I'm going to request a personal audience with the High Empress. Everyone stared at him. Are you insane? Seraphina grabbed his shoulders. Shoulders. Victoria will kill you the moment she sees you. Maybe, but maybe not. David looked into her golden eyes. You told me that no one ever challenged your sisters. No one ever stood up to them. What if someone did? What if a tiny human walked into a dragon court and demanded to be heard? You would die. I might. David smiled. But I'd rather die trying to save you than live knowing I didn't try. Seraphi's eyes filled with tears. She pulled him close, pressing his small human body against her massive dragon form. You impossible, stubborn, beautiful fool, she whispered. If you die, I die with you. The bond ensures that. Then I guess I better not die. He held her tight, feeling the warmth of her scales, feeling the beat of her heart that now matched his own. In 3 days, he would face the most powerful creature in the galaxy. He would probably fail. He would probably die, but for the first time in his life, David Miller had something worth dying for, and that made all the difference. The Draconian fleet filled the sky. 1,000 ships hung in the darkness around Station Meridian 7, their weapons hot and ready. Every human on the station knew they were looking at death. One order from the Empress, and they would all be dust. David stood in the docking bay, wearing the nicest clothes he owned. They were still just mechanic coveralls, but Seraphina had attached a gold pin to his chest. It was her personal seal. It marked him as her bondmate. It was the only thing that might keep him alive. You don't have to do this, Seraphina said. She stood beside him, her wings folded tight with worry. Yes, I do. David checked his reflection in a metal panel. He looked scared. He was scared. If I don't try, everyone on this station dies. I couldn't live with that. You might not live at all. Then at least I'll die knowing I did everything I could. The shuttle arrived. It was a draconian vessel, all black metal and sharp edges. 2 massive warriors stepped out. They looked at David like he was an insect. The human will come alone, one of them growled. The Empress has agreed to the audience. David turned to Seraphina. He reached up and touched her face. She leaned into his palm, her scales warm against his skin. Wait for me, he said. Forever, she replied. I will wait forever. He walked to the shuttle without looking back. If he looked back, he might lose his courage. The trip to the flagship took 20 minutes. David spent the time trying not to throw up. The warriors didn't speak to him. They barely looked at him. To them, he was already dead. The flagship was called the Eternal Flame. It was the size of a small moon. Inside, everything was built for giants. The hallways were 30 feet tall. The doors were big enough for dragons in full form to pass through. David felt smaller than he had ever felt in his life. They brought him to the throne room. It was enormous. Pillars of black stone held up a ceiling lost in shadows. Fire burned in great bowls along the walls. And at the far end, on a throne of gold and bone, sat High Empress Victoria. She was even more terrifying in person. Her golden scales reflected the firelight. Her wings spread behind her like a sunset made of knives. Her eyes fixed on David, and he felt like a mouse before a cat. But he walked forward anyway. One step, then another. The room was silent except for his footsteps. Hundreds of draconian nobles watched from the sides, their faces showing curiosity and contempt. David stopped 10 feet from the throne. He did not bow. Among humans, you didn't bow to someone who threatened to kill your people. Victoria tilted her head. You are the human who bonded with my sister. Yes, you are smaller than I expected. I get that a lot. A murmur ran through the crowd. No one spoke to the Empress this way. Victoria's eyes narrowed, but she did not order his death. Not yet. You requested this audience. Speak your piece, little human. Amuse me before you die. David took a deep breath. This was it. Everything depended on the next few minutes. Your Majesty, I came to ask why. Why what? Why do you want Seraphina back? She refused a marriage. That's not a crime worth sending 1,000 ships over. Victoria leaned forward. She defied the will of the Empire. She embarrassed our house. She must face the consequences. But what consequences? Death? Prison? Being forced to marry someone who will hurt her? David shook his head. Among my people, we call that tyranny. The crowd gasped. Several warriors stepped forward, hands on weapons. But Victoria raised her hand, stopping them. You dare lecture me about tyranny? Your species is barely 1,000 years old. We ruled galaxies while your ancestors were living in caves. Maybe. But in those 1,000 years, we figured out something important. David stood straighter. We figured out that true strength isn't about forcing others to obey. True strength is earning their loyalty. True strength is building something that lasts because people believe in it, not because they fear it. Pretty words from a dead man. Maybe I am dead. Maybe you'll kill me right now. But that won't change the truth. David pointed at the assembled nobles. Look at them. They're scared of you. They obey because they have no choice. Is that what you want? An empire held together by fear? Victoria stood. She was 18 feet tall, and her shadow fell over David like a blanket of darkness. You know nothing of our ways, human. I know enough. I know that Seraphina ran away because she was treated like property, not a person. I know that she cried when I showed her basic kindness because she had never experienced it before. David's voice grew stronger. I know that your empire is old and powerful, but it's also broken. It produces warriors, but not happiness. It demands obedience, but never asks for love. Love is weakness. No, love is the strongest thing there is. David touched the scale patterns on his arm. Seraphina gave me part of her soul to save my life. She didn't have to. There was no law forcing her. She did it because she cared. Because she chose to. That choice, that freedom to give yourself to someone else, is what makes love powerful. Victoria stared at him. Her expression was unreadable. The whole room held its breath. And what about you, little human? Do you love my sister? David didn't hesitate. Yes, I love her. I've loved her since the moment I saw her scared and alone in my hangar bay. I'll love her until the day I die, whether that's today or 1,000 years from now. You would die for her? I would. But more importantly, I would live for her. I would build a life with her. I would stand beside her through every difficulty and celebrate every joy. David looked directly into Victoria's burning eyes. That's what love means. Not just the grand sacrifice, but the small daily choices to put someone else first. Victoria was silent. The flames crackled. The warriors shifted nervously. Then the Empress did something unexpected. She laughed. It wasn't a mocking laugh. It was genuine, deep, almost warm. I have lived for 12,000 years, Victoria said. I have heard speeches from kings and emperors, generals and philosophers. But I have never heard a speech like that from a creature I could crush with one hand. She sat back on her throne. Her expression had changed. The predator was still there, but something else had joined it. Respect, maybe. Or curiosity. You know what the old stories say about humans? They say you are weak, short-lived, fragile. Victoria smiled, and this time it wasn't scary. The stories never mentioned that you were brave, or that you could love so fiercely. We're full of surprises. So it seems. Victoria turned to her court. I came here to punish my sister for her defiance. But I see now that I was wrong. She looked back at David. Serafina did not run from duty. She ran towards something better. She found a partner who values her as a person, not as a political tool. She found love. The crowd murmured in confusion. This was not what they had expected. I hereby declare that Serafina, seventh sister of the Dragon Empire, is free to choose her own path. Her bond with this human is recognized and honored. Anyone who threatens either of them threatens the throne itself. David couldn't believe what he was hearing. Just like that? Just like that. Victoria stood and walked toward him. Each step shook the floor. She stopped in front of him and knelt, bringing her face close to his. You have courage, David Miller. You walked into my throne room, knowing you might die. You spoke truth to power when silence would have been safer. That is rare. She extended one clawed finger and touched a gold pen on his chest. Take care of my sister. Love her well. And perhaps, she smiled again, perhaps visit us sometime? I think I would like to know you better. I'd like that. Victoria rose and addressed the room. The fleet will withdraw. Station Meridian 7 is under the protection of the Dragon Empire. Any who harm it will answer to me. And just like that, it was over. David walked out of the throne room in a daze. The warriors who had escorted him now bowed as he passed. He was no longer an insect. He was something else entirely. The shuttle took him back to the station. Serafina was waiting in the docking bay. When she saw him alive, she ran forward and swept him into her arms, lifting him off the ground. You survived, she gasped. How did you survive? I told the truth. And apparently, dragons respect that. She held him tight, her tears falling on his shoulder. Around them, the station erupted in cheers. Humans were hugging each other, crying, laughing. They had faced annihilation and survived. Commander Wells approached with tears in her eyes. Miller, you beautiful, crazy man. How the hell did you do it? I just talked to her. Treated her like a person instead of a monster. David smiled. It's amazing what happens when you do that. 5 years later, David and Serafina lived in a small house on a quiet human colony. He still worked as a mechanic. She served as an ambassador between humans and draconians, the first ever. The relationship between their species had transformed from cold tolerance to genuine alliance. They were on their porch watching the sunset when Serafina spoke. Do you ever regret it? Bonding with me? Giving up your normal human life? David looked at her. After 5 years, she was still the most beautiful creature he had ever seen. The sunset turned her scales to liquid fire. Never, he said. Not for 1 second. Even though you had to fight my sister's army. Especially because of that. He took her hand. My life before you was quiet, safe, empty. Now it's full. Full of adventure and challenge and love. I wouldn't trade it for anything." Seraphina smiled. She pulled him close, wrapping her wings around them both like a warm blanket.